Rani is a 24-year-old girl from New Delhi, India, who lived with her parents and her younger brother named Chintu. From a young age, Rani used to being surrounded by her siblings and neighbors, which kept her away from other children her age. Moreover, Rani also helped her parents at the cake shop every day, making her a good kid, until finally, she got to know a man named Vijay, the son of her parents' friend. Vijay's family was a close friends to her family, and they also intended to match her and Vijay. They met several times and got closer until they finally got engaged and were about to get married. During preparatoin, though it was still 2 days before D-Day, but the situation there was very lively because all the family and the neighbors helped the preparations. In the afternoon, a day before the wedding, Vijay, who recently returned home after living abroad, asked to meet Rani at a cafe. At first, Rani refused, because according to tradition, the bride and groom were not supposed to meet on the days approaching the wedding, but finally, Rani came accompanied by her brother because Vijay insisted to meet. When they finally meet, Rani told Vijay about the excitement in her house and that everyone was busy preparing for the day. She then asked why he wanted to meet her. Instead of giving a surprise or good news, Vijay suddenly asked to cancel the wedding, where the ceremony had already been prepared. Not just canceling the wedding, Vijay also didn't intend to talk directly to Rani's parents but was only going to tell them by phone. As soon as Rani arrived home, she went straight to her room, ignoring everyone that was calling her and asking her to come out to talk. Back to the past, to the moment when Rani and Vijay were dating. They first met when Vijay's parents visited Rani's parents' shop, and since then, Vijay often met with Rani and they kept seeing each other and calling her his queen, until finally, Vijay expressed his love for Rani. All these memories kept spinning in Rani's head, who was silent and alone in her room. She was still surprised by the fact that the man she loved so much had the heart to dump her and cancel the wedding when the day was just counting hours. Everyone that was involved with the wedding was sad about what happened to Rani. Her parents and grandmother were doing what they could to cheer her up because they didn't want to see her drowned in sadness. After her wedding failed, Rani still insisted to leave for her honeymoon in Paris and Amsterdam with the tickets provided from the beginning. Therefore, for the sake of Rani's happiness, her parents finally allowed her to go on the trip alone to Europe. Arriving in Paris, fortunately, Rani was quite fluent in English. She was able to communicate with the taxi driver and finally arrived at the hotel. Rani also informed her family via video call and had time to ask if Vijay had called, which turned out that he didn't at all. Her mother asked her to return home as soon as her vacation ended because she was afraid of her. After chatting for a while, Rani, who was tired of the long trip, decided to end the call and went to sleep, but suddenly, someone was making out in the room next to hers and the noise was so loud it woke her up from sleep. Rani then went to the balcony of the room and met Lakshmi, a half-French half-Indian who worked as a hotel staff. While casually smoking, Lakshmi told Rani that she was just making out with a man she just met. Rani was shocked to hear that. That night, Rani went to the nearest restaurant to get something to eat. She didn't understand anything on the menu and randomly picked a dish, which turned out to be so strange for her. She went outside to vomit, and the cherry on top, there was a group of Japanese tourists who saw her vomit and took her picture. Panicked, she immediately ran away until finally she was stopped by the police for acting suspiciously. Rani was almost taken to the immigration office because she could not speak French and left her passport at the hotel, but fortunately, Lakshmi showed up. She knew the policeman and managed to persuade him to let go of Rani. Rani then chatted with Lakshmi, who apparently already had a child from a relationship with her boyfriend. She was also shocked to know that Lakshmi's full name was Vijay Lakshmi, the name that made her recall the man that just dumped her. The next day, Rani, who was still tired after the incident yesterday, called her grandmother and told her to take a walk. Following her grandmother's words, Rani ventured out of the hotel and went for a walk, but the situation there made Rani even more frustrated because she saw many couples on vacation. One of them even asked Rani to take their picture. It reminded her even more of Vijay. Bored with Paris and made her even sadder, Rani decided to go to the travel agency office to refund her ticket and return to India, but when she was on her way to her hotel, a thief stopped her in a quiet alley and tried to take her bag. Fortunately, a man showed up from a window above them and scared the thief away. Rani, who was still panicked, contacted Lakshmi, who told her to meet at a nightclub, but when she was waiting for Lakshmi, someone gave her alcohol that immediately made her drunk. She then started blabbering about her boring life in India in front of people and Lakshmi. She told the story of how strict her family was in her hometown and her ironic love story with Vijay, mostly about how cruel he was to dump her right before their wedding. That night, for the first time in her life, she felt the freedom she never had in her entire life. Later, when they arrived at Ronnie's hotel room, Ronnie received a video call from her family, but since she was too drunk, Lakshmi decided to pick up the call. Chintu and Ronnie's father were too engrossed with Lakshmi's sexiness, even their grandmother thought they were watching an adult film. The next day, Lakshmi took Ronnie to a clothes store to try some sexy clothes, but since Ronnie was not too fond of the style and never tried such clothes, she decided to pick some that picked up her interest instead. Lakshmi then decided to help her pick the one that suited her. When Ronnie was trying on the clothes in the fitting room and taking some selfies, she accidentally sent one of the pictures that were meant to be sent to Lakshmi to Vijay. After that, they continued to travel around Paris and visited Ronnie's aunt's house, who lived not far from there the next day. They felt sorry for her nephew for failing her wedding and gave Ronnie encouragement so that her vacation could really make her forget her sadness. Instead of being carried away by sadness, thanks to her meeting with Lakshmi, she was slowly able to let go of her mind from Vijay. She then cancelled her flight back to India and planned to continue her vacation to Amsterdam. Later that night, Ronnie also went to the club again and looked at the Eiffel with Lakshmi. The next morning, it was time for Ronnie to leave for the train to Amsterdam. For a keepsake, Ronnie gave her best friend the dress that she brought from India, while Lakshmi gave her a package for her to give to a friend, Roxette, in Amsterdam. After spending days in Paris, finally, Ronnie continued her journey to Amsterdam. During her travel on the train, she got a call from Vijay asking to meet her, but Ronnie, who was fed up with him, refused and instead told him that Ronnie is already dead. Arriving in Amsterdam, Ronnie immediately went to the hotel that Lakshmi had ordered, and how surprised she was because she had to share a room with 3 men who came from different countries. They were Tim from France, Taka from Japan, and Alexander from Russia. Of course, Ronnie wouldn't want to share a room with another man, so she decided to look for another hotel. Sadly, it was too late and she couldn't find another hotel, so like it or not, she had to stay there, even though she wasn't got used to bunk beds and sharing a room with 3 other men. Worried about her safety, she then took her pillow and decided to sleep on the bench outside of the room, shockingly, dreaming of Vijay. Thankfully, even though their life was freer than life in India, fortunately, Tim, Taka, and Alexander were surprisingly kind. They respected Ronnie very much. Even the 3 of them decided to sleep outside and let Ronnie sleep in the room, so the next morning, Ronnie started to be more friendly and cooked breakfast for them. As usual, Ronnie received a call from her family, but she had to keep the secret that she was sharing a room with 3 other men, because, if they found out about it, her parents might have a heart attack. Later that day, when Ronnie was traveling in Amsterdam while looking for something to eat, she met a man named Marcello who recommended her to have lunch at his restaurant, but when trying the food, Ronnie was not used to Italian food and asked for spices. She then added those spices as if she was making an Indian dish. Knowing that Ronnie was not liking his food, Marcello was offended. They had a little argument since Ronnie was messing up his recipe and made it as if it is an Indian food. Ronnie had enough of the argument. She decided to pay for the food and immediately left from there. Although it was her first time to travel alone, luckily, Ronnie met good people like Lakshmi as well as her 3 roommates who seemed to be getting closer to Ronnie. The 4 of them went to have fun in Amsterdam, starting by taking a canoe, gambling, performing on the street, going to the convenience store, and even going with Tim to buy souvenirs. One day, while hanging out with her friends, Ronnie once again met with Marcello. He told her that he wanted to return her money and said that if a patron of his restaurant didn't like the food, he wouldn't ask to pay for the food. Marcello thought that Ronnie understood about cooking and invited her to take part in a cooking contest, and if the food she cooked sold better than his, he would let her take some of the profits for that day. Ronnie didn't seem to be confident with herself, but after her friends encouraged her, she decided to take the challenge. Later that day, Tim, Alexander, and Taka accompanied Ronnie to meet Roxette, Lakshmi's friend, who turned out to work as a stripper. The 2 of them talked a lot, and it was how Ronnie found out that out there, the world is not only about rainbows and flowers, but struggles and sacrifices. There are women out there working so hard to provide for their families, even to the point where they walk the path against the norm. Though it was wrong, they had no other choice. From Roxette, Ronnie realized that women are strong enough to achieve a lot without depending on men. After that, Roxette invited Ronnie to see her at the club. The next day, Ronnie went to the cooking contest to fulfill the invitation from Marcello the other day. On that occasion, Ronnie confidently cooked a dish called Golgappa, a unique snack with a tasty and spicy special sauce from India. At first, customers who bought it complained about the spiciness, but after a while, the spicy taste changed to a savory taste that was unique and never found in Italian food, which luckily, the taste matched most of the customers who came. Fortunately, at the cooking event, Ronnie's dish was sold very well. People started queuing at her stand. Thanks to that, she also got half the income that day from Marcelo. After giving the money, Marcelo jokingly said that Indians are really good at cooking but not at kissing, and to show how wrong Marcelo was, Ronnie said that Indians are good at many other things too. After saying that, Ronnie dared to kiss him. Unfortunately, when returning from the event, Ronnie accidentally ran into VJ, who had been looking for Ronnie everywhere for days in Amsterdam. When he met Ronnie, VJ immediately assumed that Ronnie had changed because he smelled alcohol from her mouth and even shared a room with 3 other men. He then asked her to return to India and continue their wedding because his parents had been preparing for the day. He had the audacity to propose back to her after rejecting the wedding. Instead of being submissive to VJ, Ronnie had the attitude to reject his invitation outright. However, because VJ kept forcing her, her 3 friends thought she was offended and tried to back her up. She then told VJ that they should instead meet somewhere else to talk about the problem. The next morning, Tim, Taka, and Alexander invited her to watch a rock performance, but Ronnie was forced to refuse because she had an appointment with VJ. They then looked at their room's wall, which was filled with lots of pictures and brochures from every guest who had stayed in the room before. Before leaving the room, Taka decided to attach a photo of his late parents while Ronnie attached an invitation to her wedding with VJ, which had been cancelled. After meeting with Ronnie at a restaurant, VJ immediately commented on the change in Ronnie's attitude and appearance and then asked her to return to her previous self because he thought that the people she met in Paris and Amsterdam had brought a bad influence on her. After that, VJ also apologized and asked Ronnie to start everything from the beginning and continue their wedding. Instead of responding to the request, Ronnie only smiled and said that she had to rush to a rock concert because she would part with her friends and didn't know when to meet them again. Before leaving there, Ronnie told VJ to talk about that topic after she returns from her vacation. Ronnie immediately went to the concert and she looked so happy when she met her 3 friends because that would be their last time to be together and that they would part ways after a few days staying in Amsterdam together. Long story short, after Ronnie arrived in India, she looked way happier than when she left. Her families were surprised to see her more stylish appearance and confidence, as if she had forgotten all her sorrows. She then talked about her story during the vacation in Paris and Amsterdam, from meeting Lakshmi to when she met her 3 new best friends. After that, she asked her father to drop her off at VJ's place and told them to leave first. VJ's mother was so happy to meet her, the same with VJ, that soon showed up and hugged her because he thought Ronnie was going to talk about their wedding plan, but suddenly, Ronnie reached into her bag and took what seems to be her engagement ring. She then returned it to VJ and calmly hugged him while thanking him, because after he dumped her, she got the opportunity to explore herself more during her time in Paris and Amsterdam, starting from traveling alone, learning to accept her problems by seeing the conditions of other people who were more difficult, like Lakshmi and Roxette, who worked for their family, befriending 3 men who really respected her, learning how to live independently, finding her hidden talent, namely cooking, not depending on men anymore, and most importantly, she was more confident in life. VJ tried to apologize, but she ignored him and immediately left from there.